It was morning. Accra was not fully awake yet, but it had risen. In the streets near Makola, shopkeepers were lifting their shutters halfway and sweeping the ground. Someone was dragging a crate. Someone was calling out for tea. Someone, waiting for the first customer, was simply looking up at the sky. There was a little dust in the air, a little diesel too, and floating gently through all of it was a soft, sweet smell. Fresh bread. That smell was coming straight from a small blue shop with an old sign hanging above it. Written by hand on the sign were the words, Ama's Oven. The paint had peeled away in places. The edges had swollen from the damp weather. The sign was not even straight. But if you passed through that street, you did not need to search for the shop. The smell itself would lead you there. Ama was standing behind the counter. She was not very old, but her face looked like the face of someone who had become familiar with life too early. There was a little flour on her cheek. Her hands were moving quickly. Under her eyes, there was a lack of sleep, and also a strange kind of strength. She was one of those people who smile, but not out of habit, out of choice. The day had gone well for her. Since morning, the butter rolls had sold. The chin-chin was gone. The coconut loaf had done well too. 2 trays of meat pies had been sold. For the small children, she had also put out cheap buns, the kind that always finished first. Now, there was only 1 loaf left on the shelf. Just one. And even that was not for sale. Ama carefully wrapped that loaf in brown paper, folded the top, and placed it beside the cash tin. This one was going home. Her mother, Efua, had not been able to eat properly since the night before. Her younger brother, Kweku, always said before school, "I'm fine," but his voice revealed that his stomach was not full. In homes like that, people do not hide hunger with noise, they hide it with habit. Ama glanced at the loaf once, then began wiping down the counter. That was when she saw the man. He did not walk directly to the stall. First, he paused a little. He stood 2 or 3 steps away. Then he brushed off a bit of dust and stood at the side, as if deciding whether he should stop or not. His clothes were clean, but old. His sandals were covered in dust. His shoulders were slightly bent. On his face was the kind of tiredness that does not come from a long walk alone. There was something else too, a silence, a restraint, an inner weight. He said nothing. He only looked at the paper bag holding the loaf. Looked at it, then looked away, then looked again. Ama noticed that,
And Amma was one of those people who notice what others do not.
"Good morning, sir," she said. The man lifted his head, as if he had not expected anyone to speak to him first. "Good morning," he replied softly. His voice was a little heavy. It sounded educated, straight, composed, but tired. Ama asked, "Would you like some water?" The man was silent for a second, then smiled faintly. "Yes, if I may, I'd be grateful." Ama took out a sachet of water from under the counter and held it out to him. He took it with both hands. With both hands. It was a small thing, but people who receive even a small kindness with respect are often either very well brought up or they have seen a great deal in life. "Thank you," he said. Ama nodded. "It's nothing." The man drank the water slowly. Then his eyes went back to the bread again. It was the look of a hungry man. Not greedy, just direct, honest. Ama took a breath inside herself. To be truthful, she did not make the decision instantly in that moment. This is the part people often skip in stories, as if good people always do good things immediately. No, usually the mind speaks first, then the stomach speaks, then home comes to mind, then responsibility comes to mind, and only after that, somewhere, humanity speaks. Ama too first looked at the loaf. Then she saw her mother's face in her mind, then Kweku's, then dinner, then the calculation of the flour running out. Then she looked at the man. If you were in her place, maybe you too would have paused for a second. I would have too. Maybe many of us would first think of what they would say at home. And the truth is, the decision that comes after that thought has value. Ama picked up the paper bag. "This loaf is very fresh," she said. "It came out before dawn." The man gave a faint laugh. "I can tell from the smell." Ama held the bag out toward him. "Take it." At first, the man did not understand. No, I was just looking." "I'm saying, take it. I can pay." "You probably can," Ama replied plainly. "But today, this is a gift." The man did not take the bag. At least, not immediately. He looked at it, then looked at Amma, as if asking, "Do you understand what you are giving?" Amma did understand, and perhaps that was why she extended the bag even farther. "Sometimes receiving a gift is necessary too," she said with a small smile. The man gently took the bag. "Then I will not refuse your kindness." That line may sound cinematic, but he said it very simply, in a soft voice, like a man who was decent by nature. He opened the paper bag, broke off a small piece, brought it to his mouth, took one bite.
And then something strange happened. It was not just eating. He closed his eyes. For one moment, the sounds of the market seemed to fall behind. Car horns, raised voices, the clatter of utensils. All of it was still there, but Amma felt as though, for that man, 2 seconds of silence had been created. He chewed slowly. Then he raised his head. "This," he paused, "this is very good." Amma gave a small laugh. "Thank you." "No," the man said again, this time with more certainty. "It is very good. There is no hurry in it." Amma did not understand. "No hurry?" "Yes," he said, looking at the small piece of loaf. "Usually, people just make bread. You gave this time." Amma stayed quiet for a few moments after hearing that. Then she said, "My father taught the basics. My mother taught patience. The rest, the oven taught." The man nodded. Then he asked the question that very few people ever asked Amma. "What do you want this shop to become?" Amma did not answer immediately. Because some dreams are the kind a person only thinks about in darkness. In the light of everyday life, even saying their name out loud feels expensive. "Even so," she answered, "bigger." Then she shook her head herself. "No, not just bigger, better." The man said nothing. Running her finger along the edge of the counter, Amma said, "I want a proper bakery. A place where not only bread is sold, a place where training happens too. Where girls can learn, widows can learn, young mothers can learn. So people who want to restart have a skill in their hands. I don't want anyone to stop only because they never got a chance to begin." The man listened carefully. He did not interrupt. He did not say, "Wow." He did not immediately offer advice. And sometimes, that is all a person needs. Someone to simply listen properly. Amma began to feel she had said too much. She laughed. "I'm talking too much." The man said plainly, "No, you are speaking clearly." Then he looked at the bag and said, "And what you gave today is part of that same dream." Amma asked, "How?" The man replied, "A person who preserves humanity even in a small place usually becomes useful to many people when given a bigger place." Then he left. Watching him go, Amma thought only this: this man is strange. When the day's work ended, Amma counted the cash. She separated the coins, straightened the notes. She never had enough money to become careless, so every note had its place. Some for flour, some for rent, some for Kweku's copybooks, and one small portion for the dream. That dream money she kept in an old cocoa tin hidden beneath the stall. Someone might find it funny, but the truth is, many big things first begin by being collected in small boxes. That evening, when she got home, Afua was sitting outside the door peeling cassava. Kweku was drawing something on the ground with a stick. Amma came closer and looked. "What is this?" Without looking up, Kweku replied, "An oven." "Again?" "This time, a big one." Amma laughed. "Why don't you draw a car?" "You can't make bread with a car," he said with complete seriousness. Amma sat beside her mother and placed down onions and a small bottle of groundnut paste. Afua looked at her face. "You are more tired today." Amma said, "Something strange happened today." Then she told the whole story. The last loaf, the stranger, the gift. Afua took a breath and only said, "Your father would have liked that." Amma grew quiet at that. Her father had been gone for 7 years, but some of his words still floated around the house like air. There was one line Amma remembered every time she opened the oven. "When the bread is warm, the heart should stay warmer." Kweku asked, "Did he say anything?" Amma, trying not to laugh, answered, "Yes, he said the bread had no hurry in it." Kweku did not understand. Afua explained, "That means it was made with love." "Then that's fine," Kweku nodded. "That's a good review."
That night, Amma took out an old school notebook. Sometimes she wrote recipe tests in it, sometimes accounts, sometimes names for the future. She wrote, Warm Hearth, House of Bread, Amma's Table, Morning Crust, One More Oven, Rise House. Then she crossed out several names. Then at the top of one page, she wrote, If I ever have my own bakery, there will definitely be one shelf for free bread. She wrote it, but while writing it, even she did not think that one day those words would really hang on a wall. The next day, the man came again. This time a little earlier. Amma was shaping dough when she looked up and saw him. Oh, you? In his hands was yesterday's empty paper bag. He placed it on the counter. I thought I should return this. Maybe you can use it again. Amma laughed. You seem to really like saving things. The man replied, I trust people who waste less. Amma looked at him closely. Today, he seemed slightly less tired than yesterday. Will you have bread? She asked. This time, by paying for it, he answered at once. Amma said, We'll see. The man raised both eyebrows. That is not a business model. As she wiped the counter, Amma said, My business is still alive, so it's not that bad. The man gave a small laugh. That laugh made Amma feel, for the first time, that this person might actually have a very light nature underneath. He bought 2 loaves, 1 bun, and 1 meat pie. Then, instead of leaving, he sat down on the bench to the side. Today, too, he watched the people. Office workers came, 2 school children came, a taxi driver came, the kind who was always in a hurry and yet never left without making a joke. An old woman came too, one to whom Amma often gave an extra small role. The man was watching everything. After quite a while, he asked, How do you remember everyone's names? Amma shrugged. Remembering names isn't hard, you just have to listen. Why do you give everyone so much attention? Because in many places, people already leave after only leaving their money behind. I want them to leave here feeling a little better. Again, the man gave that same expression, as if he were comparing something in his mind. He asked, And if your bakery becomes very big? Amma answered, Even then, there will still be a person standing on this side of the counter, right? If the scale grows, then the remembering should grow too. After a brief pause, the man said, Interesting. On the 3rd day, he came again. On the 4th day, too. On the 5th day, too. By now, Amma was beginning to get used to him. Sometimes he bought bread, sometimes only tea. Sometimes he sat for 5 minutes, sometimes for half an hour. Sometimes he asked strange questions. What is the cheapest thing you would keep for school children? What if a trainee fails in the first week? If flour becomes expensive, would you compromise on quality or profit? Can you really give free bread every day? Is every good deed good for business? These were not easy questions, and Amma could not always answer immediately. Sometimes she said, Let me think. Sometimes she said, I don't know. Sometimes she said, My heart says one thing, the accounts say another. The man listened to her answers and sometimes wrote something in a small notebook. One day, Amma got irritated enough to finally ask, Are you a teacher? No. A writer? No. An inspector? Amma said jokingly. The man smiled. If I said yes, you would get nervous. Amma, placing buns into a tray, said, I already do. He asked, And if I say I'm just curious? Amma replied plainly, Then I still would not fully believe you. The man laughed out loud. For the first time, that laugh had less weight in it, more warmth. Then he said, Fine, trust me halfway. For now, that's enough. If truth be told, this is where the story becomes better. Because in real life, people do not immediately turn out to be angels, nor villains. At first, they just seem strange. And then slowly, either trust forms or it breaks. The same happened with Amma. When she asked the man's name, he said, Kofi. Just Kofi. No more, no less. A week later, Kofi brought a newspaper. He opened it and placed a finger on an advertisement. Sunrise Food Dreams Initiative. Small food businesses, big community impact. Final application window. Amma looked at the ad and immediately folded the paper shut. Kofi asked, That's it? Amma said, This is not for me. Why? Because in programs like this, the people who go are the ones who have branding, printed menus, Excel sheets, polished English. What do I have? Kofi answered plainly. Product. Amma laughed. What does product do by itself? Purpose. Purpose does not pay rent. But without purpose, expansion becomes hollow. Amma cleaned the counter, but said nothing. Kofi asked, why do you really not want to apply? Honestly. This time, Amma looked at him directly. Honestly? Because rejection hurts more than hard work. Kofi fell silent. That was the kind of answer no brochure ever writes. Amma continued. I'm poor, but I'm not blind. I know how people look at things. A small stall, a handwritten sign, a borrowed oven, nightly accounts that are difficult. They see all that and use the word potential, but they invest very little. Kofi's face did not change. He only said very softly, you may be right. The system may have problems, but it is also possible that this time you are wrong. Amma did not reply. Kofi folded the newspaper and said, apply. Easy for you to say. It is not easy, he said. That is why I'm saying it. That night, Amma did not decide to apply. Not the next night either. The evening after that, when she went to her supplier to buy flour, he reminded her of an old debt. When she returned home and opened her accounts, she realized that if sales dropped even slightly over the next 2 weeks, things would become harder. In that tension, she took out her notebook. She drew a long line across the page. On one side, she wrote, why I should apply. On the other side, why I should not. The why I should not side filled first. No money. No printing. No formal clothes. Travel cost. If I do not reach the final stage, people will laugh. Waste of time. My English is weak. My numbers are not perfect. Then she began writing on the why I should apply side. The bread is good. Customers come back. The idea is clear. I really do want to build a training center. Mother needs rest. Kweku needs a better school. If I don't do it, I will always wonder what would have happened. At the end, she wrote one more line. If I stop because of fear, then the stall itself will become my limit. The next morning, she did not show the paper to Kofi. She only said, where do I get the form? Kofi only said, good. Amma immediately replied, not good, difficult. Fine, he said, difficult is good. The application was not easy. That was important in this story too. At the district office on the first day, she was told that 2 documents were missing. On the second day, the printer was not working. On the third day, one of the clerks looked at her file and directly asked, are you from a registered company? Amma said, not yet. It's a stall. The clerk made the kind of face people make when they have already filed you into the weak category. Cases like this usually don't get shortlisted, he said. Sentences like that hit straight in the chest. Amma held the brown envelope tighter. If you had been there, maybe the thought would have come to your mind too. Forget it. Go home. That thought came to Amma too. But there was a line behind her. There was heat. The bus fare had already been spent. And she remembered that man's question. Why do you really not want to apply? Honestly. Amma said to the clerk, whether it gets shortlisted or not, at least take the file. The clerk shrugged. Fine, leave it. Amma submitted the file, but on the way home, she cried. Not loudly, just with her face turned toward the bus window. No one even noticed. That night, Afua saw her quietness and asked, was it submitted? Amma nodded. Then why are you sad? Amma said, I just felt like I did not belong there. Afua put down the knife. Look at me, she said. Amma looked. Afua said, where your work can stand, your stature can stand too. The size of a counter or an office does not decide your worth. Amma wrote that line at the back of her notebook. The days passed. Amma spoke less about the application. There was more work, more tension too. One day, the flour price went up again. A regular customer asked for credit, and Amma could not say no. One tray of buns got overbaked because she had heard Kweku talking about school fees and lost focus. That night, she felt deeply broken. When Kofi came the next day, he understood immediately that something was wrong. Everything all right? Amma said, yes. Lie. Amma looked at him. How do you always know everything? Not everything, he said, lifting a bun. Only what is written on the face. For the first time, Amma said with a little anger, no, it is not all right. Happy? Kofi put the bun back. No, tell me.
Amma tried to stay silent. Then she kept talking. Rates, fees, what the office clerk had said, the overbaked tray, the tiredness, the fear, and worst of all, the fear inside her that maybe she was not really as big as she wanted to think she was. Kofi listened to all of it. Then he said only one thing. Do not measure yourself while you are tired. Amma closed her eyes for a second, because sometimes the right line at the right time keeps a person from breaking. 2 weeks passed. Then a cream-colored envelope arrived, with an official stamp. Amma did not open it immediately. The truth is, before opening some letters, a person wants to remain a little bit who they were before, because once it opens, either hope rises or it falls straight to the ground. Kweku was shouting, "Open it!" Efua said, "Say Bismillah and open it." Amma opened the flap. She read the first line, then the second, then the third. She handed the paper to Efua because her hands were shaking. She was a finalist. Not the winner, not yet, but a finalist. And what was the final stage? A live baking presentation. At a public event. In front of judges. In front of investors. In front of foundation leadership. Amma's first reaction was not happiness. It was fear. Public? She asked out loud. Kweku shouted, "You did it!" Amma looked at him. No, the hardest part is still left. That is why this version is more real. Because in real stories, good news comes with new pressure. That night, people from the neighborhood came to congratulate her. Someone brought malt. Someone said, "We knew it." Someone said, "Don't forget us now." Someone simply smiled and pressed her shoulder. Amma kept thanking everyone, but inside, her stomach kept turning. The next morning, Kofi came. Amma waved the letter in front of him. Did you know? No. You lie sometimes. Rarely. Amma asked directly, what if I fail on stage? Kofi answered, then you will fail on stage. That's all. Life will not end. Easy for you to say. Yes, he admitted. For me, saying it is easy. For you, doing it will be hard. Amma was slightly surprised. Why don't you become wise in every conversation? Kofi said, because calling something difficult is also a form of respect. Now the preparation began. Amma had to create a signature loaf, something memorable, something local, but new too. Something that also fit an affordable future model. She tried millet, honey, ginger, orange zest, a little sesame. Version 1 was dry. Version 2 was too sweet. Version 3 had a burnt crust. Version 4 lacked depth inside. Version 5 was good, but not special. At version 6, Efua said, it's close. At version 7, Kweku ate 2 slices. Then came version 8. Everyone ate and looked at each other. No one said anything immediately. And that kind of silence is good. Amma asked, what? Efua said, this has both home and guest in it. Kweku said plainly, winter bread. Amma laughed. She named it Sunrise Loaf. On the day of the festival, the Accra Harvest Food and Enterprise Festival was full of color. White tents, music, the smell of food, long lines, brand boards, sample trays, loud sales pitches, printed brochures. Every polished setup you could imagine. Some had matching team shirts. Some had roll-up banners. Some had custom boxes for tasting spoons. What did Amma have? A folding table, a clean cloth, 3 sunrise loaves, a borrowed warmer, a handwritten price card, and hands that knew the work. She wore a yellow dress, a clean apron. Her mother had pressed the fabric. Kweku looked from the side and said, you look professional. Amma replied, just pray I behave professionally too. The other finalists were not bad. There was a woman from Kumasi who made cassava crackers. A man from Tamale had brought a school porridge concept. A young mother from Cape Coast had come with fortified biscuits.
Each had arrived carrying their own dream. That gave Amma a little peace. It felt less like competition and more like humanity. The judges came. Questions were asked. Why millet? What is your scaling plan? Will training be free or subsidized? What is your waste management plan? Supply chain? Pricing for school children? Amma answered. Some answers were excellent. Some were decent. On one answer, she got stuck. A judge asked, how will you maintain margins if you also keep a community loaf shelf? Amma paused for 2 seconds and said, honestly, I still need to fine-tune the full model. I don't want to run a business on idealism alone. I need to learn how generosity becomes sustainable. The judge wrote something down. Amma's heart sank. She thought that had been the wrong answer. But in truth, it was her strongest answer, because it was real. Kofi was nowhere to be seen. Amma looked into the crowd 2 or 3 times. He was not there. The longer he did not appear, the stranger it felt to her. She did not want to depend on him. But some people quietly become part of a person's courage. After the final tasting, all the finalists were called to the front area. The stage lights came on. The announcements began. Special awards were given. Innovation, nutrition, audience favorite, best youth concept. Amma's name was not called. She took a steady breath, folded her hands, and told her heart. Making it to finalist stage was no small thing. Then the announcer said, and now our founder and chairman will address the finalists. There was a slight stir in the crowd. Phones went up. A path opened at the side. And then Amma saw him. The same man, but now in a completely different form. A tailored dark suit, a kente pocket square, upright posture, clean shoes, his name shining on the screen. Kofi Mensah, founder, Mensah Harvest Group, chairman, Sunrise Community Foundation. Something inside Amma dropped straight downward. She forgot to clap. She forgot to breathe. She only stared. And in 1 second, all the scenes of the past several weeks appeared in a new light. The notebook, the questions, the bench, the newspaper, apply, the gift loaf, the first bite with closed eyes, everything. If you ever see a person suddenly inside a new reality, the mind refuses first. The same happened to Amma. Kofi came onto the stage, took the microphone, looked at the crowd. Then, for one moment, he looked at Amma. Directly. Not the way a powerful man highlights someone in a crowd, but the way someone confirms recognition. Then he began to speak. When I was young, he said, my mother used to say that food is not made only with ingredients. Food is made with intention. The crowd fell silent. In the world of business, we are often impressed by polish, presentation, vocabulary, packaging, and all of that matters. But communities are not lifted by polish alone. Communities are lifted by people who do not lower the standard of care, even in a small place. Tears filled Amma's eyes, though they had not fallen yet. Kofi continued, this year I decided to step out of the office. I went to the road. I visited stalls. I tasted products. I spoke to owners. I wanted to see who the people behind the forms really were. Then he paused lightly and said, at a stall near Makola, I met a young baker. She did not have much. She had one last loaf that was meant to go home, and she gave it to a stranger, not knowing what she would receive in return, simply because she saw hunger. A small sound rose through the audience. Someone was saying, "Aw." Someone was speaking to someone else. Someone was looking around for Amma. Kofi raised a hand slightly and then said, but I am not rewarding kindness alone. I am rewarding quality, clarity, discipline, and a vision that does not limit business only to one's own pocket. Then he said the name, Amma Ajay. Amma felt as though her feet had grown lighter than the ground. She walked slowly toward the stage. In the crowd below, Afua was crying. Kweku was standing on a chair telling people, "That is my sister." When Amma reached the stage, Kofi handed her a folder. But before making the full announcement, he said into the mic, "It is my honor to announce Amma Ajay as this year's grand recipient of the Sunrise Food Dreams Initiative." The crowd erupted. Applause. Faces. Phones. Noise. Amma closed her eyes and took one deep breath. Then Kofi said something else. "And the award will not be cash grant only." The crowd instantly went quiet again. Mensa Harvest Group and Sunrise Foundation will jointly launch Amma's bakery and training center with a full setup. People shouted, some in joy, some in disbelief. And in the first year, training support will be provided for 20 women. Amma opened the folder. Inside were architectural sketches, an equipment list, a starter inventory plan, a training support schedule. Written at the top was Warm Hearth Bakery House. Through her tears, Amma laughed and looked at Kofi. "This name," Kofi said softly, "the one from your notebook, was better than all the others." Amma stared at him for a second. "My notebook?" Kofi smiled. "Once the wind turned a page. I saw it. Why didn't you tell me? Because then you would have hidden the notebook." Amma was laughing and crying at the same time. Then she took the mic. At first, her voice trembled. She paused. "I keep thinking that if, on that day, I had just held my last loaf and gone home, maybe I would never even remember it for the rest of my life. But today I understand that sometimes a person's real test comes when they have very little to give." The crowd was completely silent. Amma continued, "I was not waiting for a miracle. I was simply working, every day, little by little, sometimes with fear, sometimes with hope. And if all of this is happening today, it is not because I was the most prepared. It is because even though I wanted to stop, I did not stop." The applause began again. "And if any small business owner is listening to me today," Amma said, "then I only want to say this. Do not think so little of your work that you reduce its dignity." That line landed directly. That is why it had power. What happened after that was not a montage. I want you to pay attention here. Because many stories end at the award. Real life begins there. The architecture team came. Measurements were taken. Budget meetings happened. There were one or two disagreements, too. One consultant said they should make the training room smaller and the retail area larger. Amma refused. "I am not building only a bakery," she said plainly. "If the training room is compromised, then the entire idea is compromised." An accountant said the one loaf forward shelf was financially risky. Amma asked, "What if we cap it? A weekly limit? Sponsored tags?" Kofi looked at her and smiled. "Now you are learning strategy." Amma replied immediately, "Necessity is the best teacher." They both laughed. The old corner building was taken on lease. It was painted. The wiring was done. New shelves came in. When the industrial mixer arrived, the whole street came to see it. Kweku kept circling around it, as if a spaceship had landed. When Afua touched the steel work tables for the first time, her eyes filled. "I never thought so much light would come out of our home." Before the opening, Amma was also given business training, profit margins, inventory loss, staff discipline, community sponsorship model, pricing tiers, and most importantly, who to give free to, how much to give, and how to do it so that the system would not collapse. One day, Kofi drew a line across the ledger and said, "Keep your heart open. Keep your accounts even more open." Amma asked, "Why didn't you say that before?" "Because before, you were not in a place to hear it." That irritated Amma a little, but it was also true. Opening day came. The board went up. Warm Hearth Bakery House. Bake well. Rise together. A line had formed before sunrise. Neighborhood women wearing bright wrappers. Children with washed faces and hair slicked with oil. Elders who said, "We just came to see," but still stayed standing in the queue. The 3 local women selected for the first training cohort stood there between fear and excitement. One was a widow, Abina. One was a hair braider who wanted a second income, Mansa. One was a young mother who had left school, Essie. And there were other women too. All their names were stitched onto their aprons. When Amma saw those aprons, for 1 second she remembered that earlier night when she had been writing under a weak bulb in her notebook. Aprons with names. Sometimes a prayer does not arrive directly. First it comes as words, then as waiting, then as work, then as truth. On opening day, Amma called everyone inside and said a few small words. "I will not give a speech," she said first. Everyone laughed. Then she said, "I only want to say this. This place was not built only for me. If someone else can run their home from here, pay their fees from here, or simply feel that they can begin again, then this bakery is doing the right work." Abena immediately said, "Amen." Everyone laughed. The work continued all day. The dough was rising. Trays were coming out.
Teacups were being filled. Customers kept coming and going. People from the neighborhood kept smiling through the window as they watched. By afternoon, 5 tags had already been placed on the 1 loaf forward shelf. Then 6. Then 9. Above that shelf was a small sign. "Leave one if you can, take one if you need." Kofi stood there looking at that sign. Amma came beside him. "Does it still seem risky?" Kofi picked up 3 more paid tags and hung them on the shelf. "Risky things are sometimes right," he said. Amma laughed and replied, "Don't say that in front of the accountant." By evening, the smell of the bakery had spread through the whole street. People were saying, "You could tell just from the smell." Just like the old stall. Only now, the difference was that the shop was no longer small. There came a moment when the rush had ended and Amma was alone inside. She straightened a steel table, folded an apron, ran her hand over the mixer, then stood beside the warm oven. The room was not silent. There was the faint smell of machinery, cooling steel, and fresh bread in the air. There was also that tiredness that comes after a successful day. Kofi came to the doorway. "Come in," Amma said. "I was just looking," he replied. "You are always looking. Some things are only understood by looking." Amma looked at him. "Can I ask you something?" "Ask." "Were you really hungry that day?" Kofi thought for 2 seconds, then laughed. "Yes, but not as simply as you think." "What does that mean?" "It means I was tasting food, but not only bread, people too." Amma nodded. "I suspected." "And you still gave it." Amma answered plainly. "I did not give it to you thinking you were an opportunity." "I know." "That's good." "It's very good," Kofi said. "If you had recognized me, I might not have felt this certain today." Both stayed quiet for a while. Then Amma asked softly, "What if I had not given it that day?" Leaning against the doorframe, Kofi said, "Then maybe I still would have bought your bread. Maybe you still would have been shortlisted. Maybe not. Who knows? But one thing is certain. What I saw that day made me believe that resources would not change you. They would only amplify you." Amma remembered that line for a long time. The next morning, Amma came to the bakery first of all. Of course. She opened the shutters, cleaned up, took out the dough, put on her apron, turned on the lights. The cool morning air came inside. For 1 second, she closed her eyes and took a breath. Then she began the work. Because getting the dream does not mean the work ends. From there, the work becomes even more responsible. And here, I want to say one thing to you. If you are listening to this story and your life feels small right now, if you do not have a big office, a fancy setup, branded packaging, that does not mean your work carries no weight. Sometimes the world sees you when you think no one is watching. Sometimes your real recommendation letter is your raw behavior. Sometimes someone is not looking at your form, they are looking at your nature. And sometimes, yes, sometimes, life really does test you in the shape of an ordinary day. What would you do? Think honestly. If it were the last loaf kept for your home, if your mother were on your mind, if your little brother were waiting, if your pocket were already tight, and then a stranger stood at your counter and only looked once, what would you do? Maybe you would refuse. Maybe I would too. Maybe we would say, "Sorry, this is spoken for." And honestly, there would not even be evil in that. Responsibility is real too. But there are some people who, even in hardship, do not let their souls become narrow. Amma was one of those people. She did not use her difficulty as an excuse for her character. That is why when the opportunity came, it was not a stranger to her. She was ready. Not perfect, not fully prepared, but true. And many times, that is all life needs. A person who understands work, pain too, and humanity too. Morning still comes in the streets of Makola.
Trotros still throw up dust. Vendors still call out. People are still rushing. But one thing has changed. When the wind turns the right way, a new smell spreads. Bread, honey, sesame, a little ginger. And in the middle of all that, one more thing. Hope. Outside Warm Hearth Bakery House, a small board is now placed every day. Fresh bread. Training ongoing. One loaf shelf available. And sometimes, very early in the morning, when there are still few customers, Amma herself stands by that shelf and straightens the tags. At that moment, if someone sees her, they will see only a successful baker. But in truth, she is more than that. She is proof. Proof that a small beginning is not humiliation, that skill is not smaller than poverty, that kindness is not foolishness if character stands beside it, that if you continue respecting your work, one day the world may have to respect it too. And the biggest thing of all, sometimes the last loaf is not meant to be sold. Sometimes it is meant to open another door. If you listen to me, do not postpone your small work until tomorrow. Your sign may be small, but keep it clear. Do not reduce your quality, even in a small place.
Do not see your customers as only a sale. And if life ever pauses at your counter in the shape of a stranger, then at the very least, look carefully enough to know whether your heart is still alive or not. Because title, money, office, influence, all of those come later. First, the raw version of a person appears. Amma's raw version was kindness, discipline, taste, and vision. That is why her story became worth telling. That is why her bakery opened. That is why work came into the hands of 20 other women. That is why her little brother no longer draws ovens on the ground with a stick. Now, he stands beside a real mixer. And that is why even today, when someone asks what the foundation of Warm Hearth Bakery House was built on, the answer is not only a grant or an investment. The answer is one loaf, one look, one honest decision, and one girl who, even in exhaustion, did not become narrow-hearted. So if your life is not moving in a straight line right now, if you are standing with a small stall, a rented room, a borrowed tool, a half-broken table, a low-balance account, or an unfinished dream, do not assume the story is small. It may be that the story is only still in its intro. It may be that you are still far from the final reveal. It may be that the people who pass by you today will remember your name tomorrow. And it may be that the thing you are doing every day will become the greatest proof of who you are. So do the work properly. Keep your heart clean. Learn the numbers. And do not tie hope to shame. Because some people are not big from the beginning. Some people begin to look big while working. Amma was one of them. And perhaps, if you keep your courage, you can be one too.